century casualty. Open your eyes, you're losing control. Open your eyes, put down the phone. Conditioned by misinformation, it's just the media telling us lies. Decide the fiction from the truth. Society's slow and tragic demise. Open your eyes, you're losing control. Open your eyes, put down the phone. Everyone's got their fucking opinion.
All right, what's happening? I hope you're well. I hope you're better than well. It's the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. We're back. It's good to see everybody. What's up, Christopher Hoffman? What's up? What's up, Dee Dee? What's up? What's up, Frankie Too Far? Good to see everybody. Looking forward to a good show. Brian Matson, what's happening, bro? What's going on in your world? What's going on in the world? A lot of crazy shit going on, you know? Sly Stone, rest in peace. Brian Wilson, rest in peace. They're dropping like Glenn Fries, you know? Yeah. I'm gonna talk to our guest today about these, because he's a well-versed music guy. Hey, Larry the Hunter. Yo, huge Broadlow fan. Me too, bro. I'm a huge Broadlow fan too, and I'm excited to have Ben on the show today. That footage, by the way, that footage that opened the show, I shot back in 2002, and just recently rediscovered it. Discovered it deep in the archive, you know, amongst a bunch of street bike footage and all this other stuff. I'm like, wait, actually, this is, and I'll talk about this with our guest, but this is what I came across, like, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. I was like, what's this one? I'm like, oh shit, Broadlow from Brownies. I gotta transfer that. Hell yeah. So, oh, you missed it. See? You missed it. We'll play some more of it when a guest comes on. But yeah, thanks for the well wishes, everybody. They're still coming in from our big wedding bash. If you don't know, we got married at the Bowery Electric at the Sunday matinee by Vinny Stigma. So that was a blast. Is that right, Larry? You were there? We'll talk about it when our guest comes on. So I just got all that footage. I got to post some of that footage that we did of the My War thing and Stigma marrying us. That was a blast. But it's all good. Let's get crack-a-lackin', you know? Is that right? Some new faces today. John Parton, all love to the Broadlow, Ben, Dean, Nick, and Bob. All right, good. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Welcome. If you are new to this journey, this is episode 379. As we careen closer to episode 400. Crazy. We are sponsored by the Texas Silver Rush, DTFM Vinyl Distro, Generation Records, Mad Vintage, Women of the Pit, Candle Witch Co., and 126 Hardcore Clothing. They're a streetwear brand for restless individuals who don't compromise. They're about being positive, spontaneous, and true to yourself. For years, they experimented with several printing methods and materials and collaborated with a large number of designers and illustrators, always giving room for fresh perspectives while retaining the hardcore attitude. Get in touch with them and ramp up your game at www.126clothing.com. Why not do another one? Mad Vintage buys, sells, and collects band shirts, primarily hardcore. The DIY operation was started and is operated by a hardcore kid who just loves collecting and eventually got into vintage clothing, specifically the realm of vintage band shirts. They're always looking to buy out collections to either keep, sell, or trade new shirts at a daily at www.madvintage.com and post it on Instagram. Dig deep into that closet of crap and reach out to them. Help me help you, Mad Vintage. That said, let's get down. Let's do Sally Mae, what's up? Hope you're well, Sally Mae. Let's clear the deck. Let's bring our guest on. Let's clear the deck. What the heck? I'm like flying solo today. No Lori Dawn, no Steven Messina, no wife, no kid, nothing. It's just me. Today's guest is a guitarist, singer-songwriter hailing from New York City. He's known for his work with the bands Sweet Diesel, the Kill Van Co., the Brotlow, and the Gilgo Beach Boys. Please welcome, coming at us from Queens, New York, Mr. Benjamin Howard Smith. Hey, man.
What's up, brother?
How are you?
Doing great. Doing great.
You know, I held off on sort of doing a dive into Brian Wilson or Sly Stone. I figured.
Oh, all right.
I figured I'd get you on, being you're pretty musically versed, but you know, Sly Stone, and then I just heard a couple hours ago Brian Wilson.
I know it's. I worry about like who's the third, right? Like death comes in threes. But that's a pretty epic one too. Brian Wilson and Sly Stone. I mean, two guys who kind of changed a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking about. I mean, Sly Stone was a real eccentric character, and I sort of kind of looked into. You know, I mean, he sort of went off the rails a long time ago.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. I mean, kind of crazy because he was so musically proficient and so incredible, and then just sort of just went drugs, just kind of.
Yeah, he went bad. Yeah, he was sort of, you know, crack is whack.
Yeah, and and you know, Brian Wilson also. I mean, I think drugs were a big part of his story.
I think Brian Wilson really was like had some real mental illness kind of stuff, and was probably like when you look at him now, you know, I mean, he might have been what we say now, like on the spectrum.
Yeah.
So I mean, and then you add drugs, and you know, that's like a lot of these 60s guys, they like had their problems and then they take acid, and that's not good for, you know, schizophrenia, latent bipolar disorder, latent manic depression. So
AKA, you know, i.e. Sid Barrett.
Well, that's exactly,
You know, i.e., you know,
half the original Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah, you're right. What's his name that was in Moby Grape and Jefferson Airplane?
Right, Skip Spence.
Yeah. Skip Spence.
Yeah.
Like, interesting, you know, the 60s and drugs, it's like, you know, a lot of people weren't really wired for massive amounts of LSD. You know?
No.
Fortunately, I was. Fortunately, I was, but not everybody is.
Right.
You know?
And then the 70s come along, and like not everyone's wired for massive amounts of cocaine.
Yeah, right.
So.
I mean, I read that the Brian Wilson book. I mean, that was pretty wild. You know how you know just his whole family upbringing and you know how they used to sort of torture the guy. But they needed him to write and produce.
Right, but then they like bullied him and his dad, and I never read that book, but I know enough about it, and I reviewed. I'm sure I reviewed more than one Beach Boys Brian Wilson documentary. Yeah. So it was like, you know,
and then the Christopher Hoffman says, my dad used to call Sly Stone Mr. Reliable because he always missed shows or showed up late. I mean, that was kind of his thing, man.
Yeah. But he's a really transformative figure in American music. I mean, he was a DJ, so in San Francisco, he played every instrument. And then again, like Sly and the Family Stone are like the first. I mean, I'm sure there were other bands before them, but one of the first integrated black and white bands, musically integrated rock and soul. And I mean, he produced his own stuff. Some of the earliest use of a drum machine on record on There's a Riot Going On, which is an amazing album. And
and I mean, I think we'd be amiss not to mention his electric performance at Woodstock. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, that was just, I mean, seeing the Woodstock movie as a young person, I mean, that was standout. I mean, as was the Who.
Yeah.
But the Sly Stone stuff was incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris Contos from Machine Head says, my dad recorded with Sly Stone. He gave me a bass guitar. Rest in peace, Sly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Chris Contos' dad was a producer in
Bay Area, right?
Yeah, in the Bay Area.
From out there, yeah.
So yeah. All right. Well, there you go. Let's back to our regularly scheduled programming. How did you come up? Did you grow up in a musical household? How did music come into your life?
Oh, I did. I grew up, I'm the youngest of 4 kids. My parents met in college and like my mom had my oldest brother when she was still in college.
Wow.
And, my brother, and I'm also substantially younger than my siblings. Like I'm 6 years younger than my closest sibling, my sister Eliza. And so, my brothers were 10 and 12 when I was born.
Wow.
So when I was 2, they were 12 and 14 and started playing in bands.
That's
and
wild.
So when I was like a little kid, that's like there were rock bands, like long hair, rock and roll, pot smoking bands playing Smoke on the Water in my basement. And I remember being a little kid going down there and like I would clench my teeth and I could feel like my whole skull vibrate because it was so loud. And so yeah.
Did you have 2 brothers?
I have 2 brothers. Yeah, my brother Dave played keyboards and still plays keyboards and is a great keyboard player. My brother John played guitar. So it's like I had it was really, again, like I was encouraged. My mom and my parents were both creative. My dad was a playwright. My mom was a novelist, but also with the caveat of like my dad also like he made his living working in magazines and worked for Starlog Press and Fangoria.
Oh wow!
Yeah. He was like the editor. And then my mom, because there was 4 of us, my mom was like a Sunday school teacher and then, a home raiser. So
you grew up really in and around the arts between a writer, music.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great. I mean, that's, I don't want to say that's rare on the show, but more so than not, it's like, no, I just, no music in my house. And like, I had a cousin, like, so this is great.
No, I was expected. It was really like, my mom was like, what are you going to play? And like, when are you going to start learning how to play an instrument? Cause and it wasn't, I mean, I did take piano lessons as a little kid, but that ended when I like, well, that's a funny story. I don't want to tell that, but yeah. I took piano lessons as a little kid, but that didn't last like 6 months. And when I was about 12, my mom was like, what's it, get to it. You got to learn. This is the way. And my brother Dave took me to see The Kids Are All Right in the theater. And I remember he was like, we could either go see The Kids Are All Right or we could go see Rock and Roll High School. And, I wonder like, how would my life be different if we went to see Rock and Roll High School? But we saw Kids Are All Right. And after like that, I was like, I'm playing guitar. Like that was Pete Townshend's the reason I started playing guitar.
That was a powerful film. I remember when that film came out. It was, it was a powerful film. The Who, I think that's something that's a little lost in the shifting sands of time. Is that there was a moment where the Who were the biggest kind of band on the planet Earth. There was a window there.
Well, they're definitely one of the big 4 of like the British, what Beatles, Stones, Zeppelin, Who, Pink Floyd. I mean, like that's you're talking 1 billion in album sales between the 5 of them.
Yeah.
And, that movie was like great. And, I think back, like, it opens with explosions.
Yeah.
Smashing guitars.
Yeah.
Cool haircuts. They're wise asses. Like it was just like as a whatever, 10 or 12, like it was everything I wanted.
Keith Moon. They had like the lunatic guy, you know.
Right. Yeah. So it was like, I was like, I want to do that. And then I want to play guitar. And also, through the Who, then I was like, I want to write songs.
Yeah.
So, and my first guitar teacher was actually this guy that my brothers used to play with, this guy, Chieli Minucci, who's a Forest Hills guy. And he's a very successful, like, jazz fusion, kind of light jazz guy. He has a band, Special Effects, that still plays. So yeah, I mean, he was my first guitar teacher. And then I sort of fell out of that for a few years. And then when I was like 15, I like started, I got really serious again about playing guitar.
I read that Christmas 1980 was sort of a big Christmas. There was the Christmas 1980. Some records showed up. The Clash, London Calling, Ramones, Rocket to Russia, a Zepp record, a Rush record, and those were ended up being big in your young world.
We called that I call that the Great Smith Family Ramones Christmas, because I got Road to Ruin. My brother John got the first album, and my sister Eliza got Rocket to Russia. And then I also definitely got I don't know when Mob Rules came out. I probably got that. And then I got London Calling, which I didn't like. The Ramones, I was instantly like, yeah, okay, like this is cool. And then the Clash, it took a lot. I love the Clash, but it took a lot longer for London Calling to get, Jimmy Jazz. I was like, what's this shit? Like,
yeah.
Give me like loud guitars.
Yeah. Hey, I want to shout out our friend Philip Leeds.
Yes.
Watching the show. What's up, Philip? We love you, bro.
Yeah. Philip, former Broadlow manager.
Yeah. That's why he's the one that turned me on to the Broadlow.
That's right. Yeah.
So what was the first, do you remember what was the first live music you went out and you saw? Did your brothers do you remember as a young person seeing anything live?
So in Forest Hills, I think to this day, they used to have this thing called Children's Day. Mm-hmm. And it was like there would be some local band playing. In the 70s, it was my brother's bands. And I remember there was this band, JK Slash, that were like neighborhood guys that were kind of like a new wavy, probably not that hip in retrospect. Right. They had like skinny ties and
right.
And then there was this band, the Propellers, who were like a power pop band who were on the Uncle Floyd show. They played one year. So it was stuff like that. And then the first concert I saw was the Kinks at it was kind of late. I was like, it was 84 or 85. I think it was 85. Yeah. Always thought it was 84, but it was the Kinks on
Come Dancing.
It was that album. Yeah. It was that tour, and it was at the Pier.
Oh yeah. I remember that run. Yeah.
But then, like a month later, I went to go see Suicidal Tendencies at L'Amour's. So like in my mind, it was always like I did all these classic rock shows, and then I saw Suicidal Tendencies. Whereas like I went to see the Kinks, I went to see Suicidal Tendencies, I went to see Stevie Ray Vaughan, I went to see Aerosmith, so it was like, it was always like mixed up. I was always just into like all kinds of music. Like
you too?
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was, I'd go see Black Flag and the Bad Brains, and then I'd go see Hot Tuna and the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
Shit like that.
Yep. Grew up with all those Hot Tuna records in my house.
Yeah. I to this day, I still love Hot Tuna. What was the first guitar that you got?
So the first guitar. So when I first started taking lessons, my brother had like an old K that was in the house, but it was
the infamous K.
Yeah. The strings were like this high off the fretboard. And I feel like when I started taking lessons in 85, I guess, like 85 was like a big like summer of '85, I came back from camp. There was this kid, John Margulies, he's made some music. It was this weird camp called Episcopal Camp and Conference Center. It wasn't really a religious camp. I think that just meant that it was really like cheap, and it was a weird place. It was like a lot of fresh air, fun kids, all city kids. But there was this kid, John Margulies. It's where I like first heard hardcore. This kid, Bruno Musso, and this kid, John Margulies, was like, "You loved music too much to not play guitar."
There you go.
So I was like, "Yeah, damn, yeah, you're right." So that was like, I came back and I started taking lessons with this guy, Chris Botta, who still plays out, lives in the city, great guitarist. So my first guitar then, like that Christmas, when I turned like Christmas '85, was a Squier Telecaster. And I had that all up through Sweet Diesel, but then it got stolen. We were loading in late one night. I wish I still have the serial number. I should look for it. But yeah, it was a black Squier Telecaster, which was a great guitar and amazing, but also like, then, you know, my friends, like the only guys I knew that wanted to play music, like wanted to play like speed metal. I'm like, Telecaster's traditionally not a great speed metal guitar.
Right.
You know, even if I was like going to play in a hardcore band, it was like, kind of need a humbucker. Not really a telly, not a lot of chicken picking in fucking hardcore.
Yeah.
Thrash, you know.
This is true. What guitar players early on spoke to you and that you really felt that who influenced you with guitar early on that inspired you?
Yeah, I think it's funny because like when I was 12 and taking lessons, it was more just like, yeah, I want to be a rock star. I want to play guitar. And, you know, certainly like, you know, I was listening to like The Who, Led Zeppelin, Sabbath, Aerosmith, like classic, dirty, burrow, fucking hard rock. And then I had those years off where I wasn't really playing. And when I started playing, I was like, and taking lessons, I was really into the Stones. And I'd gotten really into blues. And I had like, you know, it's like, again, I always say like, you know, Jimmy Page and Keith Richards told me to go listen to Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters.
Yeah, sure.
It's pretty good advice.
Yeah.
So I was doing that. So I was like listening to real blues and the Stones, and then like stuff that was easy to play, like, or I mean, it's not easy to play, but like stuff that I could learn, like Sabbath, AC/DC, and then pretty soon after I, you know, again, I was like getting into punk rock then at the same time that I started getting serious about playing guitar. So, you know, early influences were like Keith Richards, Mick Taylor, Steve Jones. Then I got really into the Stooges. So it was like James Williamson. I got, you know, I was always just like looking for more stuff to hear. I liked hardcore, but I didn't like those guitarists. There wasn't like guitar playing. I mean, I love Greg Ginn, but like he wasn't like an influence until later on, I don't think. But like, yeah, like it went from like Stones. Oh, another guy like early on, like the Eric Clapton Blues Breakers record.
Yeah.
Jeff Beck.
Sure.
All those guys. And then punk rock kind of was like James Williamson, Johnny Thunders, that sort of stuff.
Was James Gang, Joe Walsh, an influence at all?
You know, that sort of came later. Like
I always felt, being a fan of your playing, I always sort of felt that I felt a little like Joe Walsh in there.
Yeah, I fucking love Joe Walsh. And when I do like, if I ever get called to like do a guest guitar solo, I always say like, what would Joe Walsh play? Like what would Joe Walsh's guitar solo be?
Yeah.
But he wasn't like, that was more like when I was coming back. Like I grew up hearing all those songs and loving them, but like, I didn't study that stuff as like a teenager. That was more like later on. I was, oh yeah, man, like looking for deep cuts.
Did you get it? Were you getting into like alternate tunings and early on, or is that something like when you sort of circled back to that? Because I know you're talking, Keith Richards and Mick Taylor and even Clapton. A lot of that stuff is different tunings and stuff.
Keith, yeah, and the blues guys, but that was more the circling back. That was more like let me unravel the mysteries of this G tuning thing.
Let me break this. Let me crack this code.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty hip to drop D early on, like before, and then it's funny because I kind of knew about it, and then when those bands like Soundgarden came out, I was like, oh, they're doing that. Like, oh, someone picked up on that. That isn't just like Jimmy Page or someone. And that was the only thing. I think Diesel had like one or two songs where we did the drop D thing, which then like Helmet did that.
Yeah.
Dad Gad. I see Chris Contos. Dad Gad's also cool. I don't fuck with Dad Gad too much. You want to start getting, if we're going to start talking tunings.
Yeah.
But it was really like when Brought Low was kind of gestating in my mind, like that's when I really got serious about learning the G tuning thing.
Yeah. What was your first band?
I mean, the first band that no one ever heard of was called Foxes You Bet and the Cocktail Killers. And it was me and my buddy Willie Nash, who's another Forest Hills guy. And then Willie had gone to high school in Manhattan, so he knew all these Stuyvesant Town kids. So the rest of
Stuytown kids,
Stuytown boys.
Yeah,
there's a huge Forest Hills Stuytown, a lot of connections.
Huh.
And so we would hang out with those guys. It was the first time I went to bars, hanging out with the Stuytown boys. In Queens, we just go to the park,
right?
Drink beers, but so that was that first band, and it was with a bunch of those guys, and it was like formless sort of. I mean, we had no aesthetic. I mean, I could say like we sounded like the Minutemen, but like I don't think we were listening to them or just weird. We were probably like really into like in the weird way that like Murphy's Law did a lot of different genres like that, like the first album, and but we played like a Rock Against Racism show at Hunter College, and I was a senior in high school. And that was so that's like technically my first band.
You went and before Sweet Diesel came together, what, like 93, 94?
Like really 91, 92.
Okay.
I was never in, so I went, we talked before, like I then went to BU for 2 years.
Right. And
I played with some dudes in a band up there called Out of Line that was like two of the guys were skinheads, so it was like all boy covers. It was like two of the guys were skinheads, and then it was like two guys from Queens, like me and the drummer Ted. And Ted, like, I was like into punk rock and hardcore and stuff. Ted was like from Bayside. He was like a jazz. I mean, it's funny because in one way he's a lot like Nick from Sweet Diesel and Brought Low. He's like a total jazz head, like one of those drummer guys. An amazing drummer, still plays music somewhere. But yeah, it was all like Last Resort, Blitz, Foreskins covers. But it was like we played like the Rec Hall we played the lunchroom at Claflin Hall. And then we played some weird VFW show. And I see my boy Eric Dixon. Shout out to Eric Dixon from Liquor Bike, Baltimore. Yeah, like we didn't play any shows. And then I came back to New York.
So you were in Boston for 2 years going to BU?
Yeah.
In what, 88?
88 through 90.
I was in Boston in 91 through 93. I mean, Boston was, I'm assuming it was still the case a couple years later. One thing about my tenure in Boston was it was an incredibly vibrant place musically.
It's really funny, dude. Like everyone, and I have so many friends up there now. Like I'm truly like I know the whole New Yorker thing is like Boston sucks, blah blah blah, but like I fucking love Boston.
Yeah.
I have a ton of friends up there. Love going up there.
Yep.
When I was in college there, I found it impossible to get anything musical going.
Huh.
And it's really one of the reasons I came back to New York. I think one of the problems was like in New York, we had like I didn't own an amp. I didn't own an amp until like Sweet Diesel had been around for like 6 months. So it was like, but you could go to practice spaces, you know, like the music building.
You could go to Joe Sandra rehearsal and spend $8 an hour. I remember Giant had a room for $6 an hour.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you'd like then like the amp would work for half a song, but you could show up with like, you know, a case of beer and your guitars and play, and they didn't have that in Boston. So I was like, oh, I got to buy an amp, and then I was like, yeah, I got to buy an amp, then I got to find guys, blah blah blah. Yeah, like I could never get anything going on when I lived in Boston.
Interesting. Yeah. So you come back to New York after Boston, and how does Sweet Diesel come together?
So, like, what's the short version? I had met.
Oh wait.
Zach.
Oh, actually, hold on. You know, sure. you sent me these.
Oh right, yeah.
Before we exit Boston,
yeah.
Interestingly enough, you sent me a flyer and a fanzine. What's going on with this?
So that was when I was in Boston. My my good friend was this guy John Dixon, who was also my roommate my sophomore year. John Dixon was from New Hampshire, and he grew up with Dave Monaghan, who shout out to Dave, who I saw sign on before, and Jonah Jenkins, who was the singer in The Only Living Witness. And I sort of fell in, you know, those guys would come down and visit Dixon, and you know, at some point, I mean, I think this was probably one of the first Only Living Witness shows, and Jonah was like, hey, do you want to do a flyer? We're playing for Killing Time. And I loved Killing Time. I would like go see them in New York and in Boston. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I did see a ton of shows when I was living in Boston. So yeah, I did this. I was like, sure. And I like did it. And it's funny. And I didn't know those Killing Time guys at the time. I mean, now they're like, you know, dear friends of mine. But yeah, I did that. And probably one of the first Backbone shows, which is Aaron Bedard from Bane, and also I think Chris Pupecki was in that band. So yeah, I drew that flyer and like.
Why were you called upon for your artistic prowess? Were you doing art? Were you? Like...
I was like, you know, again, like half the young men of New York City. I was a graffiti writer.
Right.
So I was kind of like, I got, you know, and I wasn't like a particularly famous graffiti writer, but then I got up there and I was like, I mean, there wasn't like a huge graffiti scene in Boston,
right? Comparatively.
So like people kind of knew me as like, oh, I could do this. And I did logos.
Is that what's caviar?
Oh, that's my tag.
There's Chip Love knows. Chippy knows. Yeah. So
as I'm known to very few people, I wasn't like I'm not like some famous graffiti writer, but I like, you know, guys I came up with.
Were you a writer or a bomber?
I was a little bit of both. I mean, like Philip, you know, it was funny because Philip and our friend Craig were like two of the dudes that really they really upped the graffiti game when they came to Boston. So, but you know, the graffiti thing's always a little, you got to be careful with that.
Yeah, you do.
It can go a little sideways. But no, you know, it's funny. Like I quit when I was like, it's sort of like I started playing guitar right when I kind of stopped writing graffiti, because that shit was going this way, and I was like, I don't know, I just like to play guitar, and you know, like it was getting like it was like I could have gone to the next level of writing and get arrested and stabbed, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to get stabbed
and have to go and like
I just, you know, I don't want to do that. I'm not into that.
Go start scrapping with guys over, you know.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm into rock and roll.
Philip says we rubbed Boston wrong at first.
They did.
Yeah.
They well, again, it was like, it's the thing. It's funny. My daughter went to college in Boston. It's the thing I always tell anyone going, and also anyone like going away to school, like, you're going to go there, like, as a New Yorker.
Yeah.
Right. On that New York shit, as Philip just said, like, you're going to go wherever you go. You're just going to be like, yo, this place is whack.
Yeah, right.
New York. We are all suckers, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, you realize, like, first of all, there's certified people everywhere. And, like, everywhere you go, there's something cool that's not like New York. And, like, enjoy that. Like, do that.
Youth. It's like,
right.
It's like when we moved to Vermont, it's like I would just walk into a place and it'd be like the Blues Brothers. They'd just be like, this fucking guy.
And you're like, what's that, hoof?
Yeah, you were. And here's another one. This is a fanzine. Did you do this fanzine or you just do the cover?
No, I did the logo. I did the graffiti logo.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So that's Look Again fanzine, which was Jonah from Only Living Witnesses fanzine that he did with this guy, Dan. I forget Dan's last name. It was a hardcore fanzine and then like with metal, and again, you can see from, like the bands featured tells you everything about the zine. I probably did this before I did the flyer.
Right. Now, Only Living Witness was Craig Silverman, who's currently playing guitar in Agnostic Front.
Yeah, right. It was Craig.
And he of course was in Slapshot for many years before that.
Right. This was, Only Living Witness started in like whatever that was, like 89. And then, years later, then Diesel would play with Only Living Witness a few times.
So that brings us to Sweet Diesel. Tell us, how did it come together? What was the mission statement, if there was one?
Well, I think the mission statement, like on the one hand, the mission statement was always like, let's rock. Like, we didn't care if it was like too rock at times, which kind of would alienate some of the punk and indie rock crowd. And then we would be punk as fuck, which would alienate the indie rockers. And then it was, it was like, it's like the Spinal Tap, like, have a good time all the time. And that, I feel like rocking and having a good time was like, in the one sense, that's what Sweet Diesel was from the first moment to the last. I used to always say, like, we formed outside a Mudhoney show. So like when we formed, in the world of punk, of the old world of punk rock, where hair length always told the story. Like when we formed, Nick and Nat had really long hair and I had like a buzz cut. And then I grew my hair long and they cut their hair short. And then by the time like everything, like when we were on the same page musically, it was like we all had short hair. But I think like we started, we met outside a Mudhoney show. Like all that stuff was hot. It was new. Mudhoney, Nirvana, Soundgarden. Zach and I had really come from the more of the hardcore scene. So that was like a reference point. And we started just playing out. And at first, like, we totally couldn't play and we're terrible. But we were dedicated and we had a great time. We like hung out together all the time. So
Rick Brush says they had an Archers of Loaf vibe.
We were a little more obstreperous, I would say. A little bit. Again, it was like there was like Husker Du there and the Replacements, but there was also, I actually like ripped off a lot of early on. I ripped off a lot of like SSD riffs and just kind of turned them around. Like I think when we became what people knew us for, Nat started out as the lead singer and I was just the guitarist. And when it took like, we played for like 2 or 3 years, just being sort of not knowing where it was going. When it coalesced Nat started playing guitar. I started singing half the songs, and it was like, one half Unsane, one half New Bomb Turks, The Who, Black Flag. It was like all those rock influences thrown in there. We were really into Rocket from the Crypt. We definitely like borrowed stuff from them. So,
yeah, even in the archive I have, I pulled a couple things out. What's interesting is, a lot of these bills that you're on with these like really incredibly eclectic bills. I mean, look at this at the PWAC. Murphy's Law, Shift, No Redeeming Social Value, Sweet Diesel, Trip Face, Home 33, which is Ryan Bland, right? Crisis Under Control. And I have a bunch of these kind of flyers. Like, here's another one. Let me see. There's
Put up the Wayne Kramer. Put up the Wayne Kramer flyer next if you can.
Let me find that one. Oh, here it is. I guess this is a little later, like a year or two later, but yeah, it's still.
No.
Here you go.
Put up the flyer.
Yeah.
So those two flyers.
Yeah.
The Murphy's Law show and the Wayne Kramer.
Yeah.
Same day.
Same day. You did both shows in the same day.
Yeah. we and again, like that was like we took that, like, it's funny. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this. That Rollins book, Get in the Van, came out, and like, what was it like? It came out like 92 or 93, and at that point, like, like no one was listening. Like Black Flag had been dead for like 8 years. Like they were a forgotten entity, right? And like back then, like bands broke up, they were gone. Like, yeah, sure, maybe at home you like listen to them, but it wasn't the cool thing that was happening. That book came out and he was like, yeah, go tour like dogs and go, play as hard to one person as to like a crowded room. And we took that to heart. And a lot of bands of our kind of age group, like Dead Guy, like I know like that book really influenced a lot of bands to like just like lay it on the floor, lay it on the stage. And so those two shows, and our thing was like, we'll play any show.
That's the spirit, man.
And so those two shows, we played an all ages show at the PWAC with Murphy's Law. We loaded up the van right after we played, like as Murphy's Law were arriving, and drove straight to the city and then played with Wayne Kramer. And a fun side note is that's also that's our friends, our boy Suerte, Adam Suerte, who's does tattoos, and him and our friend Jason had urban folk art. But Shelf Life, who's on that bill opening, that's our friend Max Bernstein, who's currently one of Taylor Swift's guitarists.
Wow.
So he's the guy, like, if you ever hear people being like, did you see Miley Cyrus's guitarist was wearing a Nausea shirt?
Right.
It's Max Bernstein.
That's
now he plays with Taylor Swift. But yeah, we would, again, we were just like 2 shows in the same night. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Like, let's do this. And again, like one show we're playing with Murphy's Law, the next show we're playing with Wayne Kramer from the MC5. So we were down.
This show here at Brownies, which is where the footage of the Brautlow that I opened the show with, for the uninitiated out there, could you give us your take on what was Brownies to a lot of people back then?
It's funny, we started playing. So the history of Brownies is there was a after hours club. It was run, and it's called Brownies because there was a dude, Brownie. He was like kind of this like looking. Were you ever at the after hours club?
No.
Oh.
I mean, I think.
But then there was a second Brownies. So Brownies was this after hours club on Avenue A, run by this guy Brownie, who was like a kind of pimp looking older black guy that wore a cowboy hat and like a leather trench coat. And then he sold that room, and people started playing there, and it really, like, I think it attracted a lot of the indie rock bands This is like a perfect example of a more like indie rock show. You know, it was great because it didn't have as much of like a kind of legacy and agenda as like playing CBGBs and all those old New York clubs. Each one had their own personality, and I think the Brownies' personality was it actually didn't have a huge personality per se, but it was very just like music centric. I mean, I feel like it's kind of what like Mercury Lounge kind of copied, you know, a lot of these places that are more, you know, it's not about the personality of the club, it's about the music. And
I agree. I feel it's a little like meat. It's like meat and potatoes, a little Nightingales ish. You know, it's not so much about, you know, the prestige of the venue. It's really, there was, just my take, you know, there was kind of something happening in there like almost every night of the week at a certain point.
7 days a week. Well, I worked there.
Ah, I didn't know that.
I played, you know, again, it's like I played there so much they gave me a job. Worked, you know, and you know, between you know, again, like CB's and Brownies, those two clubs, all three of my like main bands played there. I mean, I'm sure I played 50 shows in each of those venues.
Wow.
So yeah, I worked the door at Brownies. In later years, I mean, it was a hugely important, you know, part of my life because it was like, well, I was in the city, you know, because I was still living with my parents because we were Sweet Diesel fucking toured. So I couldn't keep a full-time job, but I could get like, where do you get a job when you're a musician? Mm-hmm. At a music club? Because they're like, oh, sure. Yeah, you're going to tour, of course.
When you're here, you're here. And when you're not, you're not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I worked with Paul Bearer a lot.
Yeah. Well, Paul worked the door at Brownies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I checked IDs.
Right.
And he took the money.
And here's another sweet deal.
Played like, you know, the good cop, bad cop. I think I was like, actually, like, I think he was far nicer than I was when we worked together.
Here's another Sweet Diesel. This is CBGB around that time, but you know, another really eclectic bill. H2O, The Out Crowd, Sweet Diesel, Dead Guy.
Yeah. That's a big Blackout Records kind of bill too, because we all so you know, Bill Wilson, he was starting this new label, Engine Records, that he wanted to be. I guess he thought, you know, I mean, in the mid-90s, it's sort of like the hardcore label could still be sort of limiting for people in the rush of post-Nirvana, you know. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, that was a Derek. Also, that Hammerhead posters by the great Derek Hess, who's out of Cleveland, who's a great guy. But yeah, so like H2O were on Blackout. So Bill Wilson started this label, Engine Records, that put out the Dead Guy 7-inch, the Work Ethic 7-inch, and the first Sweet Diesel album. And they also, I can't remember whether Outcrowd was on Blackout or Engine, but yeah, they were also part of that family. And Trusty, who's on that bill, were from DC. They were on Discord. They were great. They were like, they sounded really, I mean, it's funny because they covered Generation X, but they sounded like that, like Buzzcocks, Generation X, like really just great songwriting.
Is this the first Sweet Diesel album you're referring to?
That's the first album. Yeah, The Kids Are Dead.
Not the 7-inch. This is the 12-inch.
No, there was a 7-inch. There might have been 2 7-inches before that, but there's the first EP that came out in '94.
I have this. Hold on, I have this. Oh.
Yeah. Zach, that's a Zach Kurland cover special, As His Kids Are Dead. Zach also did a Killing Time 7-inch cover. And shout out to Zach. And then before the album came out, we put out the Morning Breath 7-inch, which was the same track as is on the album.
Yeah, this is
actually where my friends Morning Breath Inc., who have done artwork for, so that's the Morning Breath 7-inch.
Yeah.
And Morning Breath Inc. is a design company who does stuff for Foo Fighters and Queens of the Stone Age, and did all the Brought Low album artwork. My boys Jason and Doug.
You guys always, you always took paid a lot of attention to album design, and I do.
Yeah, well, like you know, you got him, man. Like, I think that goes back to being like 10 years old and getting like, Road to Ruin or The Mob Rules. Like, you could just hold those in your hand and look at them and be like, oh, this is cool. Like, what,
Yeah. Package is important.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So that, now Lee put that out. And funny,
Lee, that's on Go-Kart, right?
Go-Kart, and then Soundviews Records,
mm-hmm.
which Soundviews was Lee's free music magazine. I mean, I think to call it a zine is almost, not expansive enough for what that magazine was to New York in that era, because it was free and, it was everywhere. And a lot of people wrote for it. And then Lee started putting out records, and he put out a compilation, and then we put that out with the Chain of Strength 7-inch artwork knockoff, which confused a lot of straight edge dudes.
Like, wait a second, like,
are you guys straight edge? We're like, no.
Because if you're not straight edge, I certainly can't listen to you.
Like, no, that's what makes it cool. We're the least straight edge band.
Oh, I can't listen to your music then. Yeah. Oh, not knocking on the straight edge.
No. And I love all those bands, and I'm playing part of that world.
Is this the last release for Sweet Diesel?
That's the last album. Yeah, Wrongville.
Yeah. You guys were pretty proficient in a couple years, though. You guys put some stuff out.
It's pretty interesting. I mean, like, we must have formed. Yeah, we like formed the fall of '91 and played our first show that winter. And then it's like, from '94, we put our work in. Like, we went on like 6 tours. We put out 2 albums, put out 3 7-inches, put out the 10-inch. We were on comps. Like, we were in it. Like, no one, not that many people liked it, but we definitely put our work in.
Well, you were young. I don't know what's funner than being a young person with your buddies and touring, man. I mean, I have fond memories of traveling and playing shows, and it was a fun thing to do,
Well, and the economy, like, let me say this, like, Sweet Diesel had ups and downs of periods where we were really popular and then less popular, and then but when we went on tour, all we needed to make was $75 a night, and that paid for a hotel and gas. Gas was like $2 a gallon. So it was like, we ate at Waffle House.
Sure.
Most of the time we stayed on people's floors, and then if we couldn't find anyone to stay with, we would go get like a Motel 6, which was
if all else failed, we'd splurge for a Motel 6 and put 8 guys in there,
Yeah. I mean, so it was like, we weren't, we were like 20, in our mid-20s. It was what else would you want to do?
Yeah, exactly. I see this is San Francisco, Chris Contos. Yeah. Is this out on tour with the Unsane?
So this was, one of 2 tours and millions of shows we played with Unsane, who were really kind of our like big brother band. And
it's good to have one.
Yeah, especially when they're like one of the best and biggest bands in New York City.
Yeah.
And this is a Frank Kozik poster.
Beautiful.
Much rest in peace, respect to Frank Kozik. There's a full color version of this that people see a lot more, but this was like one of, I have a full color version too. Yeah, this tour was fucking crazy. It was 2 weeks out to San Francisco with Unsane, And then, because they were flying to Australia from San Francisco, we had to go, like, this is on a, okay, so this is the last show of the tour, was a Saturday night. And then the following Friday, we were flying to England to start what was supposed to be a 8-week European tour. And we drove straight across country. Like, we left, I think, on that Sunday, or that, I feel like we might have even stayed until Monday in San Francisco, just having a good time. But we were like, we could stop every, like, you know, drive 12 hours and get hotels and like spend all this money. And we were like, let's just drive straight. And we drove straight through San Francisco to Forest Hills, Queens, where we were still practicing at the time. 53 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, with only 2 drivers, because, you know, me and Nick, being city boys, I didn't learn to drive until I was 41.
Yeah, I've done that. It's like one guy drives, one guy sleeps.
Exactly.
You just do this all the way across the country.
We had 2 teams, like shotgun, and people were always like, "Oh, you and Nick didn't drive." Like, I was like, "You don't understand." Like, we did 7-hour shifts, like 2 teams. Me and Zach was one shift, and then Nat and Nick were the other shift. And it was like, riding shotgun, you had to like pull the tapes out, whatever the driver wanted to listen to. You had to like route it, and with the Rand McNally Road Atlas.
Sure.
And most importantly, you had to make sure the driver didn't fall asleep, which, you know,
would happen.
Yeah, and if you take 80, it goes from San Francisco to New York City. So we just stayed on 80 for 53 hours straight. Yeah, it was amazing.
Just as we're sort of heading down the home stretch with Sweet Diesel, here's another flyer that sort of is a testament to that era. Clockwise, Serpico, Sweet Diesel, Green Sleep, Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah,
at the YMCA in Long Island, in Huntington.
Yeah, wow. I don't even remember this show.
Yeah.
I don't know if, because I don't know that we actually made this show.
Did you send me this, or is this this might have been from my archive?
You must have found this, but, you know, again, like those 90s shows, especially the hardcore shows. Yeah. And, you know, I don't really think that Sweet Diesel was a hardcore band. I was thinking of this. I was like, Sweet Diesel was part of the New York hardcore scene, but we weren't a hardcore band. Sure. But we were like, we knew everyone. We grew up with all those guys.
Yeah.
We hung out with them and we played with them, but our music wasn't that. But
you had but I think, but let me just say that in a lot of ways you had a lot of hardcore sensibilities, sort of your lifestyle and there was so
totally. But and there's always been bands like that were like in the hardcore scenes. But those 90s bills were so diverse. I mean, because by that point, like, I mean, I think it's so interesting. Like, I don't even think it was really until like the late 90s I started hearing like the first bands that were like, we're going to sound like 82 style hardcore. Oh, and as Lee says, and we covered Agnostic Front and Reagan Youth. So, I mean, we were definitely like
we weren't a hardcore band, but we covered Agnostic Front and Reagan Youth.
But also,
I didn't realize that's Lee. I didn't realize that's Lee.
Oh yeah.
Hi, Lee.
But somebody that, like, again, like it wasn't until like the late 90s that I remember bands coming out being like, we want to sound like 82 hardcore, or we want to sound like 87 hardcore. It was like hardcore up until that point was like, you know, 81 it's SOA, and then like 1995 it's Dead Guy and Bloodlet, and I mean Earth Crisis don't sound like Minor Threat at all, but they were a hardcore band.
Really interesting thing you bring up, because early on everything was sort of forward moving, right? You have the first wave, you have the second wave, and then there comes a certain point where the third wave or the fourth wave is heavily influenced by what came. But there were years where what came before wasn't really much. It wasn't an influence. It was all sort of new territory, leading into a lot of stuff. And then of course, you have bands now that are, well, not just now, but at a certain point, bands that were influenced by bands that were influenced by bands, like bands that are influenced by Biohazard or Leeway who were incredibly influenced by what came before them.
Leeway are a huge influence now, and Madball, which again,
and Marauders. I every other band I hear now sounds like a bad version of Marauder.
Yeah.
Or a good version of Marauder. Like, I'm just saying,
You said that. You said that, not me.
Yeah. But yeah, that makes sense. Why did Sweet Diesel come to an end? How did that hand play out?
I think it kind of ran its course. Again, we definitely were, when we started that band, it was like bands were still getting signed after the Nirvana thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think initially we were like, yeah, hey, maybe we can catch some major label money too. And, by the time we became a real band that was actually playing good music, I think we didn't think that so much anymore. It was no, we want to be we want to earn it like Black Flag and put in our, it's about the journey and it's about the music. It's not about being a rock star. But at a certain point, it was I don't know, it was just hitting diminishing returns. It's also we didn't fit into a scene we'd go on tour and the shows were everything was still wide open when we started. 95, you'd go play a small town and there'd be a bunch of weirdos that wanted to see touring bands. And 2 years later, I feel once that music started getting really popular, and especially real, because again, Nirvana and the grunge bands, that's not punk rock in a kind of pure way. Yes, it is, but once this stuff, the post Green Day effect, and there was one tour where we went out and all of a sudden every awesome Midwestern town, it's if you weren't a pop punk or a ska band, they fucking hated you.
Yeah.
And 2 years before, you would go there and it would be oh my God, everyone was dancing and not moshing, but just everyone was having a good time, tons of beer, everyone was friendly. And then 2 years later, you'd go and it was you're playing with ska and pop punk bands, and those crowds were younger and they really didn't dig what we were doing.
It reminds me of that line in Gladiator, the mob is fickle, brother.
Yeah.
The mob is fickle, brother.
And tastes change, and I think it just kind of ran its course. Zach had had some health issues and quit the band, and nothing I actual health issues. It wasn't Zach became a heroin addict and had to go to rehab. No, he actually had health issues, and Cooper joined on bass. And Cooper, that's sort of the wave into the Kill Van Kull. Eric Cooper, who had been in Die 116 and actually was in Home 33 before Ryan. And I think he was the original singer. But it was just a different band. And we went on this 2-month tour, and it was the worst tour. It was insane, dude. It was we would only play. It was we had shows Sunday through Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday off. Ooh. It was insane. But we had just signed with this label, Gypsy Records, who were an affiliate of Velvel. And we had tour support. And they tried to they tried to chintz us, and we're we can't give you tour support. And we're then we can't go on tour. But they had to send us out on tour to prove, I think, to Velvel that they were a real label and not just a front. Right. So yeah. So we were in the middle of this terrible tour, but we were our rent was paid and we had money. They were we also had this good scam. They were and we'll pay for gas and hotels, but you got to make all your receipts. And so we go get gas.
Here it comes.
Gas was like $1.99, right?
Sure.
And so we'd go and we'd be like, could we get $50 worth of gas? and could we get a receipt? And they'd be like, yeah, sure. And then it would be like $17 of gas. And then we'd just go in and be like, and then we'd spend the rest of the money on like beer and get like a 30-pack.
Hey. So that Sweet Diesel sort of plays out and kind of make the jump to the Kill Van Kull, but
yeah,
how from what I understand, one ended and you jump right into the next one, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. Like the last Sweet Diesel show was August '98, and I was on tour with Kill Van Kull by I think November.
Wow.
And again, so the Kill Van Kull had been this band Moses that were also on Gypsy Records, and they had a singer, this girl Diane, and they were recording an album and kind of got screwed over. They recorded an album that the label refused to release, and the singer quit and started a band with the son of the label guy, and it was all kind of weird. And those guys formed the Kill Van Kull around the same time that Cooper joined Sweet Diesel, and they went and recorded a demo, and they actually recorded a 12-inch, basically like an album, and put it out themselves. And that sort of came out right as Diesel ended, and I was on tour with Cooper, and Cooper was like, I really dug this.
Was that Human Bomb?
Yeah, the Human Bomb 12-inch. They were like, the other guitarist was Giannis from Citizen's Arrest and Hell No, and he was moving to Indiana to get a master's degree in like Soviet, like Russian literature. Wow. I believe that's what it was. Maybe I have it wrong, but they were like, "Do you want to join?" I was like, "Yeah." I mean, I got no other plans for November.
Yeah, sure.
My band just broke up.
I'm in.
Yeah.
And this October, I guess this is a little bit later, but it seems that in a lot of ways, a lot of the usual suspects are still in play here.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here we are. Here I am on tour with Unsane again.
In Ohio. In
Ohio. Another Derek Hess poster at the Euclid Tavern, which Sweet Diesel had played with my buddy Jason Byers' band Disengage. Great Cleveland band. Oh, and the thing I love about this flyer is, first of all, they misspelled the band name. which one of the constants, like some of the constants of my life have been misspelled band names and playing with the Unsane.
Right.
And then also if you look at the ex-members of thing, it says ex-members of Dead Guy, Sweet Diesel, and Kiss It Goodbye, and it's like no one in the band was in Dead Guy. So it's like you just show up and it'd be like ex-members of like, we're like, no one was in Dead Guy, but yeah. So
that's I mean, yeah, I fucking love Dead Guy, man. What?
Yeah. None of you guys were in Dead Guy? That's Keith.
Here's another one. I like this flyer. Here you go.
Yeah. Hey,
and this is CB's, and I mean these are once again these are Disassociate, Cave In,
Yeah, I mean this was really the when, especially the thing with like Cave In and Botch and ISIS. Even though I think neither Cave In nor ISIS played this show ultimately, but like that's Kill Van Kull sort of fit very well with those bands of that kind of like really heavy post-hardcore kind of thing. I also sent this poster over. This was one of Rich Hall's first shows that he booked.
Oh, wow.
Sadly passed away this year.
Yeah. Rest in peace,
and
Rich Hall.
Rest in peace, Rich Hall. And there's the tribute shows this weekend.
That's right.
For Rich, which include Dead Guy, Kiss It Goodbye, I believe Caven's playing, and maybe ISIS.
Wow.
So yeah, I just wanted to a little tribute to Rich, and he was a sweetheart. And
I think there's a show in Asbury and a show in New York, right?
I believe it's 2 New York shows. I think. I gotta check. But yeah, I think that's Friday and Saturday of this week.
Makes sense. How does the hand play out with the Kill Van Call and as we make our way to the Brotlow?
Well, is like when I lived with Nick in Greenpoint, we had an apartment together. There was like bands would stay with us, and our practice space was down the street, and Kill Van Call practiced there. Sweet Diesel had practiced there for a few years after we moved out of my parents' basement. And me and Nick had this thing. It was like, we'd call it like Wednesday night. Like we'd go down on Wednesday nights. And I was writing all these other, the Kill Van Call stuff was like hard to play. It was like really like a lot of off time stuff. And a lot of kind of herky jerky stuff. And then like at home, and I wrote stuff for Kill Van Call, but like at home I started writing these more like songs on my acoustic guitar, and they weren't that at all. And they were more kind of singer-songwritery and bluesy and, some country influence. And me and Nick, we lived together, just be like, what do you do? Let's go down the street. Let's jam. And that sort of was happening at the same time as Kill Van Call. And then
towards the end of the
Kill Van Call was only like 2 years. It was like
towards the end of the century.
Yeah. It was like because Kill Van Call formed in like 98. I joined summer 98. I mean, I must have already been playing with them when we had the last Diesel show. And like Diesel, we did like a farewell show on North 6th Street in Williamsburg. So like, I always had these other things going on, writing songs and playing them with Nick, and then playing Kill Van Call. And then, in the incestuous world is like Cooper and Jim Paradise from Kill Van Call started playing in the JJ Paradise Players Club with Dave Curran from Unsane and our friend Joel Hamilton, who's a producer. So like then there's like Kill Van Call, but then there were these 2 splinter bands, and then we both kind of started playing out, but we were still doing Kill Van Call shows. And then Bob was like going to, it's just sort of like, I don't know, it was just sort of like going in different directions. And Bob went to Egypt for like 6 months, I want to say, to chase his love, Lizzie, who's they're happily married to this day. So it was like, I remember we like kind of like, it wasn't really like we're breaking up, but I remember we had a meeting like where it was like, yeah, I think I'm going to go do this Brotlow thing. And people like, when Brotlow first played out, like people were like, oh, this is like a new cool thing that isn't like the older bands. And, and then the Players Club were pretty kick-ass right out of the gate. So it was like these other things were happening. It just sort of felt like, it wasn't like, it was never acrimonious in any of these situations. It was always
it just sort of, everybody just sort of wandered off in their own direction,
And then we were all still in the same practice space together.
Right. That's cool. Hey,
I'm still in a practice space with all these fucking guys to this day.
Really?
Nat from Sweet Diesel, Nick, Bob.
That's funny.
And our friend Jake. Yeah. So it's like,
That's great. Hey, let me take a quick sponsor break.
Sure.
Let me shout out our sponsors, and give me a couple minutes if you need to get up. Be about 5 minutes, and we'll come back and we'll do a deep dive into the Broadlow.
Sounds great.
See you in a minute. That's right. It's the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Our guest today is Ben Smith from the Broadlow. We're going to go deep, get into some all you Broadlow fans. So let's do a little word from our sponsor, and we'll get right to it. Since 1992, Generation Records has been a mainstay of the New York metropolitan area music scene. Today, they offer a diverse selection of new and used rock, jazz, indie, hip-hop, punk, hardcore, metal, blues, soundtrack, and reggae LPs, as well as t-shirts, posters, and other merchandise. They buy used record collections and music memorabilia and will pay you top dollar for them. House calls made for large collections in the tri-state area. Call or email generationrecords@gmail.com and follow them on Facebook and Instagram.
Will that be cash or in debt?
Do you mean debit?
Yes. Sorry. Another eternally satisfied customer.
Yo, what's happening? I'm out here at one of our all-ages Sunday matinees on the Bowery. I hope that you are enjoying today's show. I just want to let you know that the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live needs your support. Please step up. There is a Patreon page that has a lot of unique program. Shows are announced there first. Lots of good stuff. There's a PayPal address right there on the screen if you want to make a contribution. There's also a super chat function. You could do that, but the bottom line is this show exists because of your support. We're going to be doing it for a long, long time. Thank you for all your support through the years. Back to the show.
Conditioned by indoctrination, conditioned by society. For a victim of the digital age, a 21st century casualty. Open your eyes, you're losing control. Open your eyes, put down the phone. Conditioned by misinformation, it's just the media telling us lies. Decipher fiction from the truth. Society's slow and tragic demise. Open your eyes, you're losing control. Open your eyes, put down the phone. Everyone's got their fucking opinion.
And we're back. It's the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Let's talk about some upcoming shows. This Sunday, June 15, the return of Freddie Madball, talking about the release of True to the Game, The Roadrunner Years, a CD box set that is coming out very soon. I happen to write some liner notes for it along with a couple other people. So Freddie Madball will be back on the show this Sunday. A week from today, Mike Maluski from Bulldoze, Train of Thought, Homicidal, Hold My Own, and Zero Trust. A week after that, J-Way from Bayway, a band that is just quite simply blowing up these days. So looking forward to having Jay on the show. That's Wednesday, June 25th. Just announced this the other day, Mantis from Venom. All right. Sunday, July 6th. And Wednesday, July 9th, Cindy Half-Rats, formerly of Lunachicks. She's doing a lot of DJing. This will be co-hosted by Lori Dawn, along with some special guests. Wednesday, July 16th, to talk about his book, Hell on, speaking of touring and in the van, to talk about his book, Hell on Wheels, Tour Stories, Remembered, Remixed, and Remastered. The author, Greg Jacobs, will be on the show. I just want to remind, if you did not already know, please support the show. On Patreon, it is the best way to support the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. There's the Patreon page. There's a $2 tier, a $5 tier. Best way to support the show. There's a PayPal address there if you want to make a contribution. There is a, you could do a super chat. There's a super chat function if you have a question for our guest when it's question time. Also, please follow the show on Instagram at Stone Films NYC. If you're watching in rerun right now, please subscribe to the Stone Films NYC YouTube page. Give the show a like. These things are all good. These things need to happen and should happen. So I want to shout out our new patron, Shannon Mulligan. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for being a part of this ongoing journey. Yeah, I think that kind of covers everything. Thanks to all the Facebook pages that support me in this show. Also, there's a lot of Facebook pages that repost this show and let me post on there and give the show a push, and I really appreciate that. That said, let's clear the deck. Make sure everything's okay. Larry Kelly, what? Hey, I'm working a bit of the show, but tonight I'm watching a bit of the show. Yeah. So Larry Kelly, our good friend, is out tour managing the Vinny Stigma country outlaw show, along with Eugene Hutz from Go-Go Bordello. So they're doing Philly tonight, and they are at the Brooklyn Bowl tomorrow. I think I will be going out there for that. Who would have thunk it? Vinny Stigma country. There you go. Let's bring our guest back on. Benjamin Howard Smith. Here we go. Hey, buddy.
What up?
How about that? Vinny Stigma out doing country.
Who would have thunk?
Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Bratlow. You kind of explained how it came together. I mean, Nick Heller's been the constant through the Bratlow, you and him, correct?
Yes. But I mean, Bob Russell's been with us since 2003 and is still here. So yeah. I mean, really, it's funny too, because sometimes early on there's be newcomer Bob Russell. Bob would be like, I've been in the band for 10 years, that
happens, man.
Yeah, Bob's been pretty constant too. But yeah,
let's at least start with as we've discussed, sort of Bratlow Mark I, which was a 3-piece, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
With
yeah. Go ahead.
Me and Dean Rispler on a bass guitar.
Yep.
Yeah. Again, I was writing these songs and they were a lot different. In retrospect, how different. But to me at the time, it felt a lot different. I had been kind of screaming my way through Sweet Diesel, and I was like, I don't want to scream anymore. I want to sing.
Yeah.
And I think there was a thing that I kind of did in Sweet Diesel and Kill Van Kull of with my guitar playing, which I always sort of thought of as trying to subvert the fact that I was a good guitar player and trying to do and again I love the Greg Ginn noisy punk rock style of guitar playing, but yeah, I was I don't want to do I spent years trying to play kick-ass blues rock lead guitar. I'm not pretending I don't do that anymore. And it was it just felt natural, the direction of the music. It was what I at the time I was listening to old soul, blues, country, and all the classic rock records I grew up on. I was kind of I was kind of a little sour on some of the punk rock stuff at the time. And Kill Van Kull had been Kill Van Kull really, aside from when we toured with Unsane, we played a lot of this kind of DIY spaces, and I was I'm not into this. Some kid in Ohio giving you a hard time because you ate meat. And I was time to go back to the bars. And so we it's funny because again, the small world. We actually, I remembered this. We recorded a demo with Max Bernstein at his practice space with Dave Curran from Unsane playing bass.
Right.
But we never finished it. And it never felt that was going to be a band because he was already doing the Players Club. And then Dean came down. I forget how I asked Dean, but he was like, yeah, like I'd love to check it out and hear the new stuff. And Dean, of course, I had produced this first Sweet Diesel album and the 10-inch and the EP that Lee put out. So, you know, Dean, we've known Dean forever. And he was a good friend and a great musician. And Dean started playing and it was just like, yeah, man, like this is happening. Like it was immediately like, this is happening. And, you know, I've played like with many people over the years and you jam with people, just not even with the intention of starting a band. But you can tell when you're like, yeah, this is like, this is hot. And it was funny.
You guys, I saw this lineup a couple of times with Dean. And
Yeah.
I listen, it's no secret. I love this band. I'm a big fan of your songwriting in this band, and I'm a big fan of your guitar playing in this band. I am a Broadlow fan, and you know, I love this band a lot. I love all three of the records you put out. I think the quality the quality control on the three records was high. I don't think, you know, usually it's like, yeah, there's the first record and this, but I feel that like all three of your records have a high standard, and the songwriting, the guitar, I think they're all three are great, man.
I appreciate that. You know, I mean, it wasn't, I mean, it's like sometimes when people are like, oh, you only put out a record every 5 years. It's like, well, we wanted to make sure like every song was good. Like every song was great.
Yeah.
You know, like I never like, you know, again, like being like when you're a classic rock fan, like there's a lot of classic rock bands I love, and they'll have like 2 amazing songs per album and then like a bunch of filler. And they're like, no, I wanted it to be like Toys in the Attic or Led Zeppelin 4 or Exile on Main Street, where every song is good. And
that's hard. That's hard to do that.
It's hard.
You know,
it was funny. It was like, we were, like I said before, like initially it was more kind of like singer-songwriter-y. It's funny because I've never really been into those like alt country bands like Wilco, but you could say it was sort of in that veinish. And then I wrote What I Found. And then it was like, oh no, this is what we should be doing. And then it was just like, you know, it's time to rock again.
Do you can you glean us any perspective on recording this record, the process?
This record, I mean, you know, yeah, it was, we did this, we tracked it on Memorial Day of, I guess, Memorial Day 2001. We recorded it at Alan Duchess's house. So Alan Duchess has a mastering house. Dean produced it. Jesse Cannon, who I just saw last weekend, engineered it. He was like a kid. He's now a very successful producer, podcaster, author.
So we recorded both our Incendiary Device records at Found Foundation Studio in Brooklyn.
Okay. Yeah.
Jesse, so we recorded both. We recorded both our records at Jesse's studio.
Oh, okay. So there you go. Yeah. It was when we were driving there, Dean, again, like now, like I go from the band of Sweet Diesel where there's like 2 drivers and 2 hump New York City kids that can't drive, to like now the Broadlow, 1 driver, Dean Rispler, which we did 2 tours together. But like as we were driving there, Dean's like, oh yeah, just so you know, and we were staying at the house for the weekend. It was in Tenafly, New Jersey. Dean's like, just so you know, the house is haunted. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, it's haunted. Alan's wife, she's friends with that guy, the Long Island, the Long Island medium. And he went there. He said it's the ghost of some lady, Charlotte. She died in 1927. I'm like,
oh, just this little haunted thing.
Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And there was definitely some weird haunted. There was like we stayed on the 3rd floor where there had been like a door that had been like kicked in by the ghost, And again, like, was it really haunted, or did I just have it in my mind? But I swear to God, I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, someone's in the room. Ooh. And then the next day, we tracked for 2 days, did all the drums, guitar, bass, and like the third day or whatever, we can't have been there. We were like the second morning or something. Dean is like, "Hey, the recording studio was an old dentist's office. It was like a classic, like, kind of suburban home, like a colonial, and then they had like a side porch that this dentist had made an office and closed the walls. And then it became, when Alan bought it, he enclosed it, and it became a mastering house and recording studio. And we went out. Dean was like, I got to show you something. And we go into Alan's dining room. He had a big fireplace with a big mirror above the fireplace. And the mirror is on the ground, face up, smashed. And we thought, at first we were like, oh, fuck, the guitars must have been so loud. It must have pushed everything off it must have like made the mirror vibrate off the mantle. And then we looked at the mantle, and all the stuff that had been in front of the mirror, which were like DAT tapes and stuff, was still there. And also, like, if you think about how it would have fallen, then we were like, well, maybe it fell this way, but then it wouldn't have landed on its back. It was face up. So it was weird. And then after that, like the third night, like me and Dean slept in the studio. I was like, I'm not going back to that fucking room. And then even then it was weird because it was like the middle of the night. There was a fireplace in there, and it started smelling like the fireplace. Like it started smelling like, so yes.
It reminds me like when we were
on Danzig and your fake, we recorded Horror Business in a haunted house.
Softy. Yeah. It reminds me of like when I was up at Normandy Sound about 4 times from bands I was managing, and it was the same. It's haunted, and like something about about recording studios, like the Carriage House in Connecticut, like where you stay in like that nasty like
attached
bunk bed, attached to it, like always haunted.
But this place, like, we definitely caught, and like, I'm not like a super ghost believer guy, but there was some weird. It was weird. I was definitely like, this is weird.
Are you happy with this in retrospect? Do you feel like it's aged well?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's funny. I don't love the drum sound on this record, but the guitar sounds are like great. And I've met people, which I kind of credit, I mean, I played it, and I get a sick tone. But no, it was like Dean and Jesse really did an amazing job with the production, and Jesse with the engineering. And I've had people come up to me like when they meet me, and they're like, oh, you're in the Brawler. They're like, how did you get that guitar sound on the first album? Because it's like, it's also a pretty unique guitar sound. It's like it doesn't really sound like a classic Marshall distorted, like it's not like, it doesn't sound like Queens of the Stone Age or like a Jack White where they're like doing this really processed sound, but it also doesn't sound like Black Crowes, like going for the most vintagey sound. So
do you play the Les Paul on this whole record?
On this record, I pretty much really do. We had so Nat from Sweet Diesel had a Les Paul Jr. and an SG Special that he lent me. The SG Special is like the Pete Townsend Live at Leeds guitar. It's got 2 P90s.
Yep.
We used the Special for a bunch of the solos, but the Junior didn't really like. It just sounded like my Les Paul, but not as good. So really, all the rhythm guitars are the Les Paul, and then most of the solos I think are pretty much split half and half between the Les Paul and the SG Special. and I might have said Les Paul special, but it was an SG special that Nat lent me. And then the acoustic guitar is something that was just like hanging in the studio. I forget what it was. It wasn't like might have been a Guild. It wasn't like a fancy acoustic, really.
Did you go out and did you tour on this record? Was it? I mean, who put? Yeah. Was it TP put that out?
TP Records put that album out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tony Crisito.
Yeah. But, did you go out and play shows on it?
Well, we played a lot of shows before it came out, and then we went on tour. We went on tour a month after it came out. Which in retrospect was really stupid, and we should have waited. It got press and it made waves, but not within the 1 month in between the release and when we played the first show in Peoria, Illinois.
Right. I think it needed a little ramp up time.
Yeah. So we went, and it was like a 4 or 5 week tour. I mean, it was a full nationwide tour. But people did there were a few people that sort of started, it's funny. It's that was the advent of when the internet, like Sweet Diesel and Kill Van Kull, it was about touring, putting out records, meeting fanzine people. That was putting up flyers. It's brought low.
Like you said, get in the van. It was that era. It was get in the fucking van.
And if you didn't do it, no one would know who you were. And again, Sweet Diesel were also no matter who put out the record, we were one of our biggest distributors, because we'd go to every store. We'd go to every record store in every town, or the the punk record stores and the indie record stores, and sell records. But Brought Low really kind of came out at the advent of, I think MySpace, as silly as it ever is to bring up MySpace, but MySpace was a thing, and you had bulletin boards, and there was one called stonerrock.com, which was the scene we kind of fell into, the most worst named genre of all time. But yeah, we we kind of caught on there. So there were some people that knew who we were. We played Portland, Oregon, and some people knew that people knew who we were in Portland. But a lot of the places we went, and in Texas, the places with scenes that kind of those bands would tour.
Yeah. Who were your peers? You mentioned, getting lumped in there as a stoner rock band, but when you kind of say that, and who were your peers? Was it Orange Goblin and other bands of that ilk? Or?
Yeah, it's funny. In New York, there was a bunch of bands, and it was us and JJ Paradise Players Club and Bad Wizard, who were also on TP. Actually, all three of those bands put out records on TP.
That's right. Bad Wizard.
We had our own kind of little thing in New York.
Right.
Then the kind of Strokes, yeahs, kind of more hipster scene kind of blew that out of the water. But we had our own little scene there, and then also the Monumentals, which was Nat's band, and the Monumentals named after Monument Park, because Nat's also an Upper West Side kid. Out of town, it was we played with Nebula in Texas. Yeah, Nebula. It was before the doom. That was the thing. We fit into that. It's funny. I was never really into those bands or Caius, but I did really like Queens of the Stone Age, and still do. And it was Queens of the Stone Age, Fu Manchu, Nebula, and there were a ton of bands all over the country that were kind of doing similar things. There were other TP bands. There was Lost Goat in San Francisco, and there were heavier bands that were also the kind of Sleep, High on Fire guys that were in that same circle.
Sure.
And
Sure.
Then there were a lot of the Southern bands that all kind of came from that COC kind of lineage of like Alabama Thunder Pussy and in Richmond, who were good friends, and RPG. So there was a network of bands that we kind of fit in with at that point, even though I didn't listen to I listened to them if they were friends, and I was like, oh, they were great live. But like, I was still going home and listening to like Otis Redding and Humble Pug,
Sure.
I was like, but I was just psyched that there was a scene that we could play to where people were into loud Marshall guitars and Les Pauls and long hair.
Yeah, you just reminded me of something, like just that sort of perspective. It's like you're not going home and listening to that because you're sort of living it and breathing it. So it's like I do enough of this shit already. It's like, let me fucking, it's like I feel like even with what I do, it's like the last thing I want to do is listen to another hardcore band. It's like when I get in the car, I listen to other things. I can't do it all the time. There has to be some semblance of balance here. It can't just, for me,
No, I agree. It's like in late stage Diesel and Kill Van Cole, we listen to the Wu-Tang Clan all the time. It was like, I want to listen to like math rock core, like, and then like in the Brought Low tours, like on tour, we'd like listen to like Pink Floyd all the time. Like just mellow music.
Yeah. Friggin' love this record. This is the second Brought Low record. What were the sort of the changes that happened with the band? You know what? I don't know if Larry the Hunter says. I don't know if this is if this chronologically is correct right now to ask, but I saw the Brought Low open for them Crooked Vultures at Roseland. Would love to hear that story.
So let's table that until we get through like the record, because that comes after that. That was 2010.
Okay, so let's talk about what changes occurred with the band, and any perspective on this record would be much appreciated.
So Dean left the band the tail end of 2002. We had also we did a second tour down to South by Southwest and back with the Players Club. And then Dean left, and Steve Tanner, who had been in Bad Wizard and played in Harvey Milk, joined on bass. And I had like new. It's funny, like that show that you uploaded. There's two of the songs from the second album that we play at that show, but that record didn't come out for another 4 years. But I started writing new songs, and there was this band All Night who we had played with, who were amazing, who put out one record with TP and then kind of disappeared. And I really, again, I love like the Humble Pie, MC5, Stones vibe. And we were like, let's get a second guitarist. And, I had known Kevin 11, who's on the, I guess that's the far left of, the left side of the picture. I knew Kevin from, All Night Does Rule. I knew Kevin from just Williamsburg bar hopping, and he had a band, High Society, with John. Was John Barry in that band? I don't think he was, but he was good friends with John Barry from Beastie Boys, who was like one of the original kind of.
Oh yeah, that John Barry.
Yeah. He was like, to me, he's like old school Williamsburg. Like those are the original Williamsburg people, like people like John Barry. So I wrote a bunch of songs, and I wanted to have a second guitarist and like do that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And Tanner had some demons, and didn't last in the band. He's a great guy, amazing bass player, amazing musician. His big contribution was Blues for Cubby, which is kind of like built around his riffs. Aside from that, mostly he was also really great. A lot of the arrangements were sort of like I wrote the riffs, and he was like, "Oh, why don't we do this and then do that?" I was like, "Oh, that's a good idea, Tanner." But then
nice to have that.
Yeah, his tenure didn't last. It's like when Dean was in the band. Like back then, I couldn't write a good bridge. Like Dean wrote, like a lot of the songs on the first album. It's like Dean wrote the bridge.
Okay.
So then Tanner, I had to kind of, I had to throw him out of the band. It's simple as that. We're still friends.
Was this? But this album was recorded as a 4-piece.
Yeah, so we got Bob in the band.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 2002, Tanner joins. 2003, Kevin 11 joins. We play our first show as a 4-piece February 8th with Zen Gorilla at CBGB's. February 22nd, my daughter's born. So then it was like we weren't doing a lot for the rest of the year. And then that fall, I mean, I kicked out Tanner because at some point Tanner was like, we should play out of town. And I was like, bet. And I got on the phone and I got a show at the Middle East with P.W. Long, who was from Mule, from Detroit, part of that whole kind of touch and go scene. Who's Mule and P.W. Long, a huge influence on the Brought Low. And I told Tanner, who had actually previously played with P.W. Long, and he was like, I can't get in a van for 4 hours. I was like, you just told me you wanted to play out of town. So I was like, you're out. And we got Bob in. Bob had come back from Egypt, had joined, again, the incest. Bob came back from Egypt, joined the Monumentals, which was Nat's band, which Nick also played drums for. And then, like, I don't know, they were kind of like petering out, and also like they were a lot more straightforward. I asked Bob to join. I kind of stole Bob, but I guess, but it like was a better fit musically, Bob in the Brought Low than Bob in the Monumentals, because Bob was a very like lead bass player, like a Dean, like right. Tanner as well. So that's the lineup. That's that record. It's me, Nick, Kevin 11. Bob Russell on bass, and we really kind of wanted to do, I mean, I think of that record as being very like Rolling Stones influenced, very Faces influenced. There's piano. We were going for more like those small amp guitar sounds. And it's funny, like there's a lot of people, like I feel like there's people that like their favorite album is the first album. And then there's people who their favorite album is Right on Time. And then there's third record, and the people like that's me, Bob, and Nick's favorite Brought Low album. But
well, yeah. Why do I remember hearing a couple of those songs before they were on this record? I remember hearing Vernon Jackson, like was there a cassette that was going around? Was there a couple of songs that was circulating?
There was a demo. There was a live demo.
I remember hearing Vernon Jackson, and maybe there was like 2 or 3 of these songs and going, this is fucking great. I can't wait for this to come out. And it took a couple of years after that. It
took a while. Yeah, no, we had actually recorded. So there was like a live demo that we were like giving out left and right. That was the Tanner. That was really, I mean, actually, that's really the Mach 2 version is with Tanner in the band and Kevin 11, and the Mach 3 is then the 4-piece with Bob. But yeah, we recorded that CB show, Kevin's first show with us. We Jamie Gorman,
like Vernon Jackson, maybe A Better Life, right?
I don't know if Better Life was on there, but Tell Me was on there.
Tell Me
was on there.
Hell yeah.
I think Right on Time, the song, which is
a great record, man. Come on.
Thanks, man. Yeah, there was like a live demo. Like there were demos for every album.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and like I said, one thing about the Brought Low catalog is, and I will die on this hill, is that all 3 records are the quality, the quality control person was on point, and kind of leading up to this. I mean, like you said, the record, you kind of put out 3 records in 10 years, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess 9.
Yeah.
I guess 9. So when you say one record every 3 years, it doesn't sound as bad, but it was really it was really 2000, late 2001 was the first album. Then spring 2006 was right on time, and then this was spring 2010.
And yeah, this has My Favorite Waste of Time on it, and the Kelly Rose, Last Man Alive.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I tell people, I'm like, this is 3 out of 3 Brought Low members' favorite Brought Low album,
right?
Because this was the one. So, like the first album, there was sometimes, my personal taste was that it was like some things on the drums sound a little overproduced, and then on the second record, like we were really trying to be like the Stones or the Faces, but then live we were still like AC/DC, MC5,
right?
Like I don't necessarily know that as much as I like that album, it represents what we really sounded like live. And I think third record, which we did with Andrew Schneider producing, that's like, and me and Josh from the studio Seaside Lounge, Josh Clark. Yeah, God, it's been so many years.
Back to a 3-piece.
Yeah, and that was the thing. So the funny thing is, like, we finally record right on time. We hook up with Small Stone Records. And right before it comes out, Kevin was like, hey, I'm moving to Richmond. We're like, dude, we just recorded an album as a 4-piece. But, and I remember, like, when we started having to play shows again as a 3-piece, it took a little kind of realigning all the way. Because especially, for me, well, it's funny. My guitar playing got a little lazy when we were a 4-piece. And then I had to work a lot harder as a 3-piece, but ultimately I dig it more. Like, and I remember like saying to Bob and Nick, I was like, we need to find our inner Who, and let's go full throttle, like live at Leeds, like just in your face. And I think third record sounds that's the record where it's like, if you listen to that record and you saw us live, you'd be like, this is the same band. And yeah, I think that's why
that was one of the things when I first saw you back in the day, the fact that you were like a power trio, it was like in the same vein as, the Experience, the Hendrix Experience, or Cream, or I love 3-piece bands, or Cactus.
Yeah, well, they had a lead singer.
Yeah,
ZZ Top, huge
ZZ Top,
and also Motorhead. Motorhead's right. I always say that Motorhead is like the sort of the secret influence that I don't think people necessarily hear it as much, but it's like me, Bob, and Dean, huge, all three of us huge Motorhead fans. So it's like really that dynamic of like attacking it. Yeah. And like, if you're not like with
James Gang. Ooh.
James Gang, yeah, definitely. The thing is this, like, if you're a 3-piece and if you're a 3-piece rock band and you don't like kill, it's really lame. Like, you're just like a kind of lame.
Well, you can't last. I mean, what can you do? I mean, you're putting it all out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, have you seen your hardcore trading card? Have you seen that?
No, I don't have a hardcore trading card.
Oh, you do, brother. You seen this?
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
That.
Yeah, and the back is really cool too. You got to see. Let me show you the back.
Huh.
The back is really pretty badass. Yeah, let me grab the back. Here's the back of it. Good. He does a really great job on these.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan.
No,
I have no idea. That's why that guy. Let's see if he's. Yeah. There you go. I got to read the factoids. My vision's not so great.
Personal trivia. Ben is the youngest in his family. When he was just 3 or 4 years old, his brothers were already playing in bands down in the family basement. He was encouraged to learn an instrument by his mom and started guitar lessons when he was in 6th grade, but got more serious about playing when he was 15, around the same time he was getting into punk and hardcore.
There you go. Yeah. Boom. It's almost like he did it right as we were doing the interview.
Josh is saying, how did I do with the bands? Well, you got Sweet Diesel, Kill Van Cole, Ben Diesel solo, the Gilgo Beach Boys, and the Brotlow.
Looks right. I'd put the Brotlow third, just because chronologically.
Yeah, right. There you go. So yeah, reach out. Hey, Josh, reach out to Ben.
Yeah. I'll send you my edit notes.
Yeah. There you go.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah. So, another. I'm not sure if you have a hard out or you're on the clock.
No, not at all.
Okay, because we're seems like we're gonna go another 15, 20 minutes here.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Another thing, yes, of course, Josh, you got it.
Thank you, Josh.
Another sort of thing that I always associate with the Brotlow is sort of like Brooklyn, Hank's Saloon, Lee. For the uninitiated, could you tell us about sort of what Hank's Saloon and when Lee was booking and that whole thing,
sure,
that scene
man.
out there? Could you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's a documentary coming out about Hank's, which they've been working on, which I was just in touch with them about. They wanted to use a very short clip of us playing. Hank's Saloon was an old bar that had been there forever. It was a bit of a kind of dive. Let's to call it a dive bar would be being kind. And in the when Dean was still in the band, we started playing there, and it was. I feel like a lot of cities have this place, which is, and even though Brotlow wasn't part of the punk scene anymore, it was still working on the principle of like DIY, like book shows. Like I booked, aside from the tours, I booked all the shows. And you network with bands and you trade shows, and that's like your ultimate commodity is like, can I get you a show in New York if you get me a show in Boston or DC or wherever? Sure. And CBs could be tough. You had to have a good drawing show to do a CB, even brownies, but Hank's was the place where you could book and it would be like, there's no door. So it doesn't matter if you I remember telling people, it'd be like, I can't get you a guarantee. You're going to get there. There's probably going to be some homeless dudes getting drunk. You should watch your gear all night. Someone needs your guitar. But we're going to have a barbecue, and we're going to get you drunk, and we're going to pass the hat. And it was just a place. Our friends Ellen and Jamie had worked the sound at CBGB's, and Jamie had been in No Thanks, early New York hardcore band, and was in Gin Mill. And Jamie and Ellen started booking shows there. I think there was also a guy doing country shows there. That was early on. And then I forget exactly when Lee started booking, but Lee started booking there in the 2010s.
And what was the moniker that Lee booked those shows under?
Dead Flowers
Productions.
Yeah, that's his production concert company. When Lee started booking shows there, it became really actually organized, and it wasn't just sort of, before it was kind of like organized chaos. Lee being a booking guy coming from his old bar Magnetic Field and booking shows in the Soundviews days, brought like a professionalism to it. John Spencer Blues Explosion played there. Lots of other bands. Hank's was a cool, again, it was that place. It was like, you're not going to make any money, but you're going to have a good time.
It reminds me a lot of what we do now at the Bowery Electric.
Yeah.
They're free Sunday, all ages, matinee, open to everybody. We pass the hat, basically. You're not going to make a lot of money, but it's going to be an incredible show. And you'll probably sell a couple of T-shirts, and you're gonna play to a really enthusiastic crowd that's gonna fucking love your band.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, again, like that's the, you know, it's like I used to, you know, the music is the reward.
That's right.
like the
that's
show
that's the payoff.
Like for most of us, right? Like we all hope we can make a living playing music. I know people, I'm sure you know people who make a living playing music and are miserable. Not to say that they're all miserable.
Right.
And it's certainly better than, you know, plenty of jobs. But, you know, ultimately, like the music's the reward. That's why you're doing it. Like,
yeah.
I mean, again, like when I think of like the Brotlow, like the main thing with Brotlow is always like, am I making music that I want to listen to? That was really like my agenda. And it was like, am I playing music that I think people want to hear, or am I playing music that I think will be popular? Like the Brotlow was really like, I want to listen to this record. I mean, you know, I want to make music that I want to hear. So
yeah. The something I discovered in doing my homework for the show, which I didn't really know existed, was sort of this which seems to be the last Brotlow release in 2011. This Co-Extinction release. These 3 songs. Was that like just a digital only? I had a hard time tracking it down even to listen to it.
So I can send you the MP3s. You know, I keep meaning to do a band camp page for it. That was Andrew Schneider, who produced Right on Time.
Yeah.
Dave Curran, again from Unsane and the Players Club, who's now doing vocals in Gilgo Beach Boys, and Jim Paradise from the Players Club and Kill Van Kull. They wanted to start a label that was like a digital only label.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Yeah, they put out like 9, and they would record it at Schneider's studios. And I mean, they did a bunch. They did a Citizen's Arrest one when those guys started playing shows again. They did Us. I think they did Fresh Kills, which those 3 guys, that was their band, Andrew, Dave, and Jimmy. They did Great Falls, who I think are one of the Kiss It Goodbye guys. They did like 10 releases. I forget who else they did.
But it seems like they sort of did almost like not around anymore, so you can't access them. You can't access the music.
That's correct.
Yes.
This is all true. So I mean,
I guess that's the I won't say the problem, but the pitfall with when things sort of went from physical to digital is if you get involved with some entity, they might not be around forever, and once they're gone, the music's gone.
Well, dude, this is the thing of the flyers. Like,
yeah, right.
You can chart the change of like band economy through my flyer collection, because all the Brotlow flyers, they're fucking big. They're like, we'd have poster size ones. We'd have, handbills, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
You get to like, and then Kill Van Kull, we have like more like 8.5 by 11 flyers. And then you get to like Brotlow, and the police really started cracking down on flyering in the late 90s.
That's right.
And so by the time Brotlow was playing, people would be like, clubs would be like, don't flyer because we'll get a ticket.
Right. That's right. They'll track it down to them.
So the early Brotlow shows are all handbills.
Right.
You'd get 4 on a page. And then at a certain point, it was just like JPEGs, because everything was like a Facebook event invite. I mean, some of the best Brotlow flyers, there's no physical version.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Same with what we do now. We've done incredible flyers. Steven Messina's made some great flyers for our shows, and I print a couple up and put them up the day of the show. But so the Brotlow hasn't played in probably close to 15 years now.
No. We were playing all the way up until 2015.
Okay.
Then
10 years.
Then we didn't play. No. Then we didn't play for about 3 years.
Okay.
And then I think the Chuck Berry flyer that I sent you, that was when the original Hanks was closing down. That was like our big reunion show. That was one of the last Hanks shows.
Where's
it's yellow.
that? Yeah, I'm looking for it. I'm not seeing that. Okay. Oh, here it is. Oh, you know what? I didn't. Okay, hold on a second. I missed these the first time around. Okay, this one. Is the Chuck Berry one the last time the Bratlo was played?
No, we played shows all throughout 2018 and 2019.
Okay.
We haven't played since COVID.
Where the fuck was I?
Yeah, that's also a Morning Breath special, and this flyer.
Actually, I was at. I might have been at this show. I was. Did you guys play like the last show at Hanks or something? Was that? Yeah.
This isn't the last, but it's one of the last.
I was at one of those shows. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was like, this is like another of those full circle shows. Mighty High, Dean plays guitar in Mighty High, and then Green Dragon, who broke up, but Zach from Sweet Diesel played guitar and sang in Green Dragon. So it was like, again, I'm like still with all these guys, but yeah, we haven't played since COVID. We've all got different things going on, and but we still have a practice space. It's I'm always like, when people are like, "Did you guys break up?" I'm like, I don't know. Fugazi never broke up. Like, I don't think the Police ever broke up. They just haven't played shows. So hopefully there's a show in the future.
I sure hope so, man. You know what? We're going to start taking some questions from around the world, but let's, before I got to take a quick sponsor break, but let's do this one. Let's do this one real quick. RS70, our graffiti historian. What part of Brooklyn was Hanks?
Oh God, I'm going to mess up the neighborhood because I am not a Brooklynite, but it was 3rd Ave and Atlantic Avenue, whatever.
But what's crazy is it's still sitting there.
Yeah, and it's empty. And they closed it to like tear it down, and then they didn't tear it. New York City real estate.
Same thing they did with the Grand Victory. They fucking closed it, got everybody out of there, and literally 10 years later, it's just sitting there empty. It's crazy.
Yeah.
How they fucking. I mean, I drive by Hanks constantly because when I'm driving, you pull up at that light and it's right there.
Yeah.
Oh, Frankie, too far. Brooklyn Heights, he says.
I don't think that's Brooklyn Heights.
Well, Frankie, too far. Maybe
not.
For,
I don't know, Frankie.
Yeah.
I don't think that's Brooklyn Heights.
Yeah.
But wait. The second, I will qualify that. The second one, where that the Swilson show with Bratlo, that was, then they opened a second place in Brooklyn Heights.
Oh, okay.
And then it was open for like 6 months.
But the first one was the one right on Atlantic Avenue.
The first one was like Atlantic and 4th Ave. Yeah.
Yeah.
4th or 3rd, I forget.
Makes sense. All right, let me take a quick sponsor break. We'll be back in a minute. We'll take some questions from around the world.
Sounds great.
That's right. Benjamin Howard Smith, the Bratlo. Get all those questions ready. Larry the Hunter, Frankie Too Far. Come on. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live, and we are sponsored by blah, 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 and Candle Witch Co. Candle Witch Company is a female-owned entrepreneur business based out of Connecticut. The owner, Rachel King Keys, handcrafts soy wax candles set with intentions for your sanctuaries. She has also accomplished a life goal dream since beauty school, debuting her artist showcase Hotties and Hillians that features live bands, burlesque, sideshow acts, vendors, food trucks, and this year, a live auction with all proceeds going to the mental health program Punk Rock Saves Lives. Capturing the tri-state area doing her thing, slinging candles at events, and keep an eye out for her show coming to New York in the spring of 2026. You can find her on Etsy and on Instagram at Candle Witch Co. That's right. Last but not least, the Texas Silver Rush is a jewelry design firm and boutique store located in the birthplace of the Texas country music scene in Fredericksburg, Texas. They specialize in working with musicians in all music genres to design and create unique one-off pieces, as well as the styling for stage, album covers, promo photos, and social media exposure. Their client list includes Rock and Roll Hall of Famers Greg Rolle, Ringo Starr, and of course, Agnostic Front. Information on online sales are being taken at their Facebook and Instagram page, and of course, www.texassilverrush.com. Woo! I gotta tell you, these candles are fucking beautiful, and they smell good too. That said, I want to mention a couple of upcoming events. Speaking of the Bowery Electric, Sunday, June 22nd, free all ages Sunday matinee at the Bowery Electric with Channel 3, Malavista, Chemical X, Chum Huffer, and Beast from the East. On my birthday, up in Boston at the Brighton Music Hall, Saturday, June 28th, Tree, Miracle Blood, Incendiary Device, it's going to jump off tonight, Scumbari and Mollusk, hosted by Tommy O'Deed. Finally, we're going back up to play Boston. I hope all our friends in New England can make it on my birthday on June 28th. Saturday, July 13th, back at our home with the Bowery Electric. It is Fury of 5, Shoot to 5, The Long Wait, featuring Jamie Sharappa from SSD Control and Steve Ristine from Slapshot, Jerry Body and Thug It. Sunday, August 3rd, Crazy Eddie's final show, part of the Uptown Rumble music exhibit on display at the Museum of Punk Rock History, along with Brass Knuckle Brigade, Enziguri, Four in the Chamber, and Go to Ments. Saturday, July 19th. Yo, what's up, Staten Island? Stigma, Incendiary Device, Fire is Murder, The Blame, The Sling Blades, and Idiot Box, Under the Stars, outdoors, in the back there at Mother Pug's Saloon at Staten Island. We're heading out to Pennsylvania to play the Upstage Music Fest on August 9th. August 31st, back at the Bowery, free all ages Sunday matinee, Demise, Nailed to the Cross, featuring Layla from Concrete Ties, who's singing now, Cropsy, Jackknife Johnny with Joe Truck, Concrete Burial, DJ Sid the Kid. Sunday, September 14th, 24/7 Spies, another one of our matinees. Yo, if you're out in San Francisco, Sunday, October 18th, we're flying out. We're playing with GBH and our friends in the Noise. Hopefully, we will see you out there. This went on sale the other day, Vinny Stigma's 70th birthday at Irving Plaza. Of course, Agnostic Front, Raw Brigade, and Violent Way, Saturday, December 6th at Irving Plaza. Get up, get out, get a ticket. It's going to sell out. And last but not least, we just announced this yesterday, our annual Holiday Slamboree Women of the Pit Coat Drive. It will be the return of My War. We're going to do it again with new singers and new songs. Butterbrain, Tree, Serial Poets, and World of Chaos. That said, that's what's going on. Please, any questions you may have for our guest, Benjamin Howard Smith, post them up now. Go deep, get weird. Let's go. Let's bring Ben back on. Hey, man.
Yo.
Sorry, I had to ramble through all that.
All good.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, Larry the Hunter says, the Brotlo was my dream band to play second guitar for. I don't know any of those guys, though, except Dean. I went to every show I could, though. Awesome band, a total breath of fresh air.
Thanks, Larry.
That's nice.
Yeah, he had asked about that Them Crooked Vultures show. So that's a question.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
that was so again, my friends Morning Breath, they are named after a Sweet Diesel song, and my buddies Jason Noto and Doug Cunningham, and they have designed albums for Queens of the Stone Age, Foo Fighters, Slayer, Eminem. I know him through Philip, and Philip hooked me up with them, and we just became like fast friends. And they've done so much stuff for the Foo Fighters that when that band formed, them Crooked Vultures, they were playing just a few tour dates, and their management was talking to Jason from Morning Breath and was like, do you know any good local bands? We don't want to just like, we want a local band to open. And they were like, hey, the Brought Low, we've done all their album artwork. And I think that was, I don't know if third record was out by then. I can't remember. But yeah, so we got on that gig, and they suggested it. And then someone that worked in the management office was like, oh yeah, I know the Brought Low. I have their CD in my car. So we got on that bill. It was the biggest show I've ever played in my life.
Wow.
3,000 people, I think. And
at Roseland.
At Roseland, yeah. Playing before, Dave Grohl, Josh Homme, and John Paul Jones.
Wow.
It was a little intimidating. Oh, the best is like, we didn't know we were playing the show until 4 days before.
Ooh-wee.
So it was like 4 days before, or like maybe 5 days. They're like, can you play the show? And I was just like, yes. And like, I thought I was going to vomit for like 3 days. And then also,
Roseland with
yeah. And then also it was like, how long's the set? It was like, I think we had a 25-minute set. So you got to get in there and practice your set and time it to make sure. So it was crazy. My brother John, guitar tech, again Dave Curran from Unsane did our live sound, because he's also he's a big has been doing sound for years. He was the Melvins sound guy for years, and Lee was like our road manager. It's like, takes a village.
Oh, you brought out the big guns,
dude. We brought out also like, we brought out everyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how that show happened. And at the end of the night, Bob saw Josh, and Josh was like, hey, I want you to know, like, we didn't just like pick you because you're friends with Jason and Doug. Like, we're into it. So that was pretty cool. And I got to meet, I always go like, this is the hand that shook John Paul Jones's hand.
Yeah.
Like,
the Led Zeppelin's unsung hero.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's such a monster.
Yeah. You mentioned the 25-minute set. We just had that. We just played Punk Rock Bowling. This big sold out show. We had the 25-minute set. We call it the Ramones set. It's just, you just go bang, 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 and out.
No stops. No stops.
Yeah. Nothing. You just bang. Bill says, I was at Roseland. All right.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
Good question, Rick. Where did the Brought Low name come from?
So, that's a funny story. It's not that funny, but it came from, if you read the book, Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin, which is an amazing book. And it's all about this kid whose father is a preacher up in Harlem. And, but his father, the preacher, is also like, cheats on his wife all the time and is a drunk, and he's a sinner. And and like, one of the refrains in the book is how his father was brought low by the Lord. And it's a thing you find in a lot of like religious texts. And, again, like when I was like forming the Brought Low, I was like listening to a lot of country, a lot of blues. It's like, I grew up in a fairly religious household. So it was like, I don't know. I'm into that shit. I'm not like a practicing Christian. I'm not like it's not like a Christian rock band or any shit, but I just like that. It's also like the Gun Club or Nick Cave, like using religious imagery. So that's where it comes from. And again, if you Google like Brought Low, it's all religious texts that come up. Like, I was brought low before God, and only through Jesus was I able to blah, 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 blah. So yeah,
you mentioned, of course, being in bands where they constantly get the spelling wrong.
There you go.
This one must have took some real thought to really misspell this, man.
It's Woody from Mighty High, so he actually can't spell. Right. But you realize it says toke together, rock together, which, by the way, I don't even smoke pot.
Yeah.
But You know, when you're playing with the Mighty
the
High.
Cake Shop. Wow, this is an early Cake Shop gig, kind of.
Yeah, but that's drawn by Brian Walsby, who did the original Walk Together, Rock Together artwork.
Oh, I see the angle
that's
here.
like the joke. You get it now. You get it?
Yep, I got it.
And King's Destroy, which is all Killing Time and Uppercut guys.
Pretty proficient artist he is.
Yeah,
Did you get to meet John Paul Jones?
Yeah, briefly. You know, me and Bob. If you go on the Brautlow Facebook page, there's a picture of Bob and John Paul Jones. I got to meet him and I got to shake his hand, but it was also like, you know, I worked at VH1 for years and like interviewed all these people, and like I don't get starstruck that easily because I'm like, hey, I'm a musician too. Rob Halford, you know, I play too. But yeah, John Paul Jones. Was there anybody? Was there in working at that job? Was there anybody that not starstruck, but anybody that got you a little nervous? I mean, the AC/DC dudes a little bit, but also like they're so down to earth, man. Like I wasn't that. I was only nervous because they're huge and I love them, and that was a great story. Like I was like, what do you guys want? You know, most of the time we were just like shooting an interview, like. But for AC/DC, it was like, you know, you need some craft services. Like, do you guys want some biscuits? And they're like, yeah, they just like lay out a tea service. And so they get there and like Brian Johnson is just did the wrong thing. Brian Johnson was like, I was showing him the tea service. I'm like, hey, we got like, you know, some chamomile and some, you know, English breakfast. You want some milk? We got sugar. We got Splenda. And he just looks at me and he goes, boy, stop bragging. And he gave me like a wink. And he called me son. He'd be like, all right, me son. So yeah, that was awesome. But John Paul Jones, meeting John Paul Jones was definitely like starstruck, like, you know.
I had Sam Cutler on this show, who was a tour manager for the Stones, the Stones, and for the Dead and Humble Pie. I had him on the show. I was a little nervous because I'm a big fan of his work, and I was so excited to have him on, man. That was one of the favorite shows I've ever done. Next to this one, of course.
And he's a G. He's a gangster, man.
and when I started talking and he agreed to do it, I was like, holy shit. Wow. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
That was pretty cool. Sort of an interesting one. What was the local music store growing up in Queens? When you grew up in Queens, was that before the whole like sort of things became, were there still mom and pop? Was there a mom and pop place, or was Sam Ash, right? Wasn't there a Sam Ash right out there?
Well, there's a Sam Ash on Queens Boulevard.
The famous Sam Ash on Queens Boulevard. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there was a Record World on Austin Street between Continental and Yellowstone. And I mean, I got tons of, like again, the great Smith Family Ramones Christmas of 1980. Like, I'm sure all those records were bought at Record World.
Sure.
I mean, and they also had like years later when I was like got really into like collecting and like finding stuff, like they had the Zeppelin, they had the Immigrant Song 45 with Hey Hey What Can I Say or Do?
Hey, well, yeah.
It's one of my favorite songs, but I can't remember whether it's Hey Hey What Can I
Do?
Anyhow, that's the B-side, and like that used to be the only place you could find that song was on that 45. So there was that, and then there was also a when I was a teenager, there was a weird like secondhand record store a couple blocks from where I live now. And I got some like crazy stuff. I got like, you know, got like MC5 and Buzzcocks records there. And my buddy Peter George got do you know Pete? He was in SSL.
I don't think
Smoking Suckers with Logic. He's friend of Chip Love's. I think Ajo, as we call him, got the Victim in Pain first press, and
wow.
There was one, but Record World was the big one when I was like a kid.
That makes sense. Tell us about the Gilgo Beach Boys. Is that your latest music project?
So that's the thing.
Who's in it and what's going on?
So the Gilgo Beach Boys started out with just me and Anthony Corallo from Kill Your Idols, and previously with Sheer Terror and a bunch of other bands. And I met him for Paul Bearer's 50th birthday. He wanted to do a cover set of Chiswick punk and like pub rock songs, and asked me to be one of the guitarists. And I met Anthony, and Anthony is like a huge fan of 90s kind of like Unsane, Hammerhead, 90s noise rock. And he asked if I wanted to do like a band like that. And at the time I was like, I don't know, kind of already did that. Like, I don't know. I'm like, and then, you know, like COVID, it's like, it's a COVID band. It's like, then he asked me again, like during COVID, and I was like, why did I ever say no? Like, yeah, like, of course, like I'm stuck in this house in Queens. And so, you know, I just like kind of got in that zone of like, I like made a playlist of everything we were listening to in the Sweet Diesel tour vans, and just, which was like, again, a mix of like those bands and then like 80s hardcore and like 70s classic rock. And I just wrote a bunch of songs and demoed them on GarageBand and sent them to Tone, as he's known. And then like he sent me back these demos with electronic drums, and they were so good I didn't even realize for like a year that they were electronic drums. I was like, wait, those are not real? Because they sounded amazing, and they, you know, it sounded like a drummer. And we were looking for a singer for a while, and a couple, like, we originally Artie Philly from Long Island, who was in Millhouse, and I believe he was in, can't remember whether he was in Indecision or Most Precious Blood. He's a friend of ours, and he was going to sing it, but then he got kind of busy. And then we actually asked John Brannon if he wanted to sing, because
John Brannon from Negative Approach.
Yeah, because Tone knows him from touring with Sheer Terror. And and he was like, at first he was like, yeah, totally. And then
sure. Yeah.
And then he was like, oh, I'm too busy. I got, you know, so, and then we were like wondering, we're like, who else? And we were like, we thought of like Dave from Unsane. I mean, like, that's kind of the vein we were going for anyway.
Right.
So I asked Dave, who's like, you know, and Dave, like, again, since we started touring with him, he's remained a good friend of mine. And Dave was into it. The only problem is Dave lives in Italy now.
Ooh.
So, but Dave's also, like Tone, is a recording whiz. So he sent over 2 songs so far. What happened then is, like, last year, me and Tone went into this furniture warehouse in Long Island, and he like put up mics everywhere because he wanted to get like a big Steve Albini drum sound. And we cut all these tracks with real drums and live amps, and it sounds pretty good.
Is this a group that maybe will play out someday?
I sure hope so. I mean, you know, he lives in Italy, but all the festivals, I mean, I think Tone's in Europe right now playing a festival with Kill Your Idols. So it's like, like, it's not an impossible idea that we would go visit Dave in Europe and play a show, or that we would fly Dave over for a show. And, you know, it's like, again, it's sort of the thing of going back to like music you want to hear. And once Dave finishes the vocals, he's got 3 more songs to do. I think Tone's going to put it out on his label, Chronic Death Records.
Cool.
Put it out on 12-inch and have Morning Breath do the artwork, and, you know, press a couple copies and have some fun.
Hey, Frankie Too Far sent me this photo. Who's this with you?
Oh, well, that's me, and that's Christian Acker.
Okay. I don't know why he just sent
that
me
was at one of Lee's DJ nights. And Christian also is hand selector on Instagram, and is also, you know, part of the old hardcore kid, graffiti writer.
Got it.
From the same world. I think he's from Connecticut originally. Old friend, good guy. That's one of Lee's DJ nights at Banter, which is owned by Chris, who's the singer in the High Stride, who is Nat from Sweet Diesel's band currently. They've got 2 EPs out, which they put out a 7-inch, which I produced and lent a little guitar to, and then they've got a new EP that's just digital, but it is really great. And they're great. They're like very like pub punk rock and roll kind of thing.
Got it.
If you like, what's that band the kids like? Guida
style?
Guida? Judah? What's that band?
Like Gouda?
Gouda, yeah.
Have you seen them?
Yeah, I've never seen them, but people love them.
Bro, they're fucking great.
Well, that's like
I saw them with my kid, like when he was really young. I'm almost tempted to say I saw them in Asbury Park. It got to be 8-9 years ago, right. And we were both like, "Wow, who are these guys?" They were really, you know what it is. If you love Bon Scott, AC/DC, like that's sort of like pub, sort of,
like on the border of like pub rock, boy, punk rock,
sort of like Cockspar, like
or like that stuff. I mean, again, that stuff that we did at Paulie's birthday party, like Count Bishops and Dr. Feelgood, like it's that thing. Great band.
They're actually playing New York like next week, I think.
Who?
Guida.
That festival, yeah.
Yeah, the
like Annihilation
on the street out on the streets. That's
out on the streets, yeah.
Yeah, Gouda's the band name. Yeah, I think.
Well, it's spelled Guida. I'm sure people are going to be like,
they're great. Check them out. They're really good.
Yeah.
They're from Italy, I think.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
They're like they're good. As we head down the home stretch here, hopes and dreams for the future.
Again, like world peace and an end to hunger.
Stop thinking so small, please.
Peace and anarchy. Reagan Youth, bro.
Yeah.
One of my favorite bands. I'd love to get this Go Beach Boys record out. Me and Tone are also working on other top secret projects with top secret people, which may never come to fruition, but hopefully they will. But we me and Tone get in the space and it's like, hey, check this out. Oh, that's cool. That's a song. Like who can sing on this? Like, at this age, it's like making music for joy and
that's right.
Not worrying about like, I had this thing. And it was a thing I started like during the COVID thing. Like, hey, do you want to form a 7-inch? Like, I don't want to form a band. Like, I don't like, but let's form a 7-inch. So doing things like that. I have a real backload of kind of acoustic songs I want to record. And then, I'd love to play a Broadlow show. I'd love to do that.
Well, that's all I need to hear now, isn't it?
I'd love to do it. So,
all right,
hopefully that'll happen.
The gauntlet has been thrown down. Anybody you want to thank? Anybody you want to shout out?
This feels like I'm on like the Golden Globes. I'd like to thank my wife Leslie and daughter Molly, and I think back on like playing in bands and like again, I still share a practice space with Nat from Sweet Diesel. Like he's still like one of my best friends. Like Zach, everyone, Cooper, who's again like Cooper's now in Unsane, so it's like this incestuous world of friends, Jim Paradise, Bob, Dean. I just saw Dean, unfortunately for not great circumstances, his mother passed. But it's like, music's the thing that always like, it's how I met my wife playing in bands. It's like, how I made most of my best friends that weren't just the dudes I grew up with. So yeah, that's the reward, the shout out. So shout out to all, like everyone I played in a band with.
Right on. Good stuff. Well, thanks, man. That was, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you, Drew.
Yeah, it was great. And you will be hearing from me sometime in the future. You know, maybe we could do something. And any kind of music thing you got going on, if you want to play out, reach out, man. We'd love to have you do one of our things, you know.
Yeah, man.
You know, we do it for the love of doing it. You know,
I'd love it. We can do an acoustic show.
Yeah, or come up when we do the My War thing. When we do the next My War thing, come up and play a couple songs with us. When we do the My War thing. It's a real circus. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I did a Black Flag. Me and Dean did a Black Flag cover set a few years ago.
Yeah,
my boy Morgan. Who's one of my
Morgan, who does what is it called? Yeah, F-bomb.
We did it in Tompkins Square Park.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was great. So
let's go.
I borrowed Steve Murphy from Uppercuts Clear Dan Armstrong for the gig.
Oh, that's rather appropriate.
Got to do it.
I saw the clip. You know, Black Flag with the new lineup played last night. And I saw a clip of it. I was like,
School of Rock, Black Flag.
I was like, pretty. Hey, you know what? Whatever. You know.
Honestly, like, there's so many of these bands with like one original member. Like, did you think it was better when he was playing with like Mike Vallejo or whoever that guy is? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you know what people don't realize about Black Flag is Black Flag was kind of a constantly changing thing anyway. You know, you might have latched on to this lineup, but that lineup lasted a year in it. You know, it's like there were a lot of people through that, and it was always his vehicle, you know?
Yeah.
So
musicians got to get paid.
Let's go get something to eat. I'll talk to you soon, brother. Ben. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for everyone who watched, and hope we didn't bore you. At least we didn't start talking about guitar parts.
Yeah. I'll talk to you later, man.
All right, brother. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There you have it. Another one in the books. Benjamin Howard Smith of the Broadlow. This was like a person. This one resonated a lot for me because I love that band. And if this is news to you, go check out the Broadlow records, man. Those 3 records are fantastic. I've been a big fan of that band, and of his songwriting, and of his guitar playing. And I don't say that about everybody. You know, I'm a big fan of his songwriting. I'm a big fan of his guitar playing. Those 3 records are fantastic. Yes, pronounce Judah. Okay, not like the cheese. All right. Hey, we'll see you on Sunday. Freddie Madball is going to be on the show. And then, of course, on June 22nd, we're back at the Bowery Electric with Channel 3, Malavista, Chemical X, Chumhuffer, and Beast from the East. Thank you for stopping by the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Tell your loved ones that you love them. Do not hesitate. This is important in this short and sometimes wretched life that we lead. Until next time, do good things, and good things will come to you.
Conditioned by indoctrination, conditioned by society. You're a victim of the digital age, a 21st century casualty.